Announced as the new pre-printed skirmish map for Imperial Assault back in March of 2019, Endor Defense Station is poised to be the next map to cycle into tournament rotation following an unbroken precedent set by map rotations in the past. Although the map has yet to officially rotate into tournament legality, many hundreds of skirmish games have already been played on this map on Vassal and at local skirmish nights since it was announced almost 6 months ago. Today we'll take a deeper look at this map, how it works, and how you can utilize it to gain an edge in your own skirmish games. Endor Defense Station is a relatively large-sized map, however, its size belies a deceptively focused battlefield. With sequential closed doors and an abundance of blocking terrain, as well as long open hallways, Endor offers advantages to both long and close-range fighters. The map is defined by two key central positions. The large indoor tile at the center of the map, called the barracks, serves as a primary control point, while the neutral mission token to the side of the map, called the shield generator, serves as a secondary control point for both missions. The map is also a unique oddity, as it is the first competitive skirmish map in many years to feature a third terminal from which players can gain an extra command card. The map is very close to being almost perfectly symmetrical, with only a few small though important features differentiating one deployment zone from the other, which is another aspect of the map that stands out from previous choices. Players who can quickly establish a foothold on the barracks will be able to exert a powerful influence over a good 3/4 of the map, though the map's open-endedness and balanced layout will also allow alternative strategies to prevail. Mission A, Renovation, involves spending actions to retrieve any of the 5 fuel cells that are scattered across the map, represented by colored mission tokens. At the end of each round, each figure scores 2 VPs for each fuel cell that it is carrying. Note that a figure can carry multiple fuel cells at a time, but must spend an action each time it wants to retrieve one. Additionally, a figure that is carrying a fuel cell while adjacent to the shield generator, represented by the neutral mission token, may spend 2 movement points to claim one of the fuel cells they are carrying, and at the end of each round, each player scores 3 VPs for each fuel cell that they have claimed rather than just 2. A figure can claim multiple carried fuel cells, spending 2 movement points for each one. Once claimed, the fuel cells are no longer at risk of being dropped by their carrier being defeated. This mission favors lists with lots of cheap figures that don't mind wasting an activation on moving and picking up a fuel cell, but also rewards players who position their attackers next to a fuel cell so it can be picked up on the next round without giving up an attack. Mission B, Claim the Ruins, is a fairly simple King of the Hill style mission. At the end of each round, the player that controls the barracks map tile by being the only player to control figures on that tile scores 6 VPs. Then the player who controls the shield generator token will score 4 VPs. Note that because this is not simultaneous, if both players would get above 40 VPs by controlling one of these objectives, the player that controls the barracks will score first and therefore win the game. The map primarily flows upon 3 main lanes of combat running from one deployment zone to the other. I will be referring to these as the green lane, the blue lane, and the red lane. The outer lanes each feature long, straight pathways with almost no cover and favor long-range shooters. The blue lane in the center is interrupted by 2 unlocked doors and a blocking terrain line which bisects the lane at the midpoint. It also features a parallel blocking terrain line which gives it strong defensive cover from figures in the green lane, but leaves it open to being flanked from the attackers in the red lane. Once both doors have been opened, a figure standing in the barracks can fire into their opponent's deployment zone with near impunity while they are standing behind the 2-space blocking terrain. The red lane offers a strong flanking position against figures occupying the blue center lane, but can only be accessed from either deployment zone or the barracks itself, making it a somewhat inflexible position to commit to. It also heavily exposed to attacks from the opponent's deployment zone, as well as the barracks itself, making it a difficult lane to occupy safely for multiple rounds. The green lane suffers from struggling to draw line of sight against figures positioned at the very center of the barracks, but can sometimes catch figures that are poorly positioned on the outskirts of the barracks, and also provides an access point to pick off support figures milling around the opponent's deployment zone, especially against the red deployment zone. Figures in the green lane must not loiter in the spaces adjacent to the barracks side entrance lest they become an easy target for enemy figures fortified within the barracks. The green lane also provides access to a 4th lane, which consists of the shield generator, a 3rd terminal, and 2 fuel cells on the renovation mission. Although not much combat tends to occur here, cheap figures will often try to sneak into this lane to reap the goodies found within, so it is an important part of the map to monitor, especially in the mid to late game. The deployment zones, while visually appearing to be very different, both have roughly equal access to resources and similar positioning options to each other. Each deployment zone front squares are 4 spaces from the closest door and 2 spaces from the closest terminal. It's important to note that it takes 6 spaces to get from the front deployment zone square to the blocking terrain line that bisects the barracks and allows one player to shoot into the deployment zone of the other if they have opened their door. Keep this in mind when utilizing things like Hera, Gideon, and Officer's free movement. Probably the most important difference between the two deployment zones is the presence of a blocking terrain square near the blue deployment zone. The square creates a heavily protected alcove in which the blue player can hide their figures. While this alcove is primarily a defensive feature, Speed 5 or greater figures such as IG-88 and figures with mobiles such as Elite Jets and Sabine are excellent at using the spot as a staging area for assaults on the barracks, as they are able to reach the all-important blocking terrain line with a single move action and attack enemies on the other side all in the same activation. This is a feature that the red deployment zone completely lacks any sort of equivalent advantage, and in my opinion makes the blue deployment zone the slightly stronger choice if you have initiative. Additionally, the blue deployment zone also has easier access to the red lane to conduct flanking attacks on the barracks, while the red deployment zone at least has a somewhat 1 space easier access to the green combat lane, able to gain line of sight to the green lane with 4 spaces compared to blue's 5 spaces. However, both red and blue are both equidistant from their respective objectives, with both sides being able to reach the shield generator in 8 spaces, the closest outdoor fuel cell in 9 spaces, and the fuel cell in the red lane in 6 spaces. Relatively safe spots to place your support figures in the early rounds are mostly limited to the 2 squares by each terminal if you are planning on opening your door in the first round, in addition to the aforementioned alcove given to the blue deployment zone. Again, elite jet troopers are especially good at assaulting enemy figures in the barracks from this alcove, able to get their flyby extra dice when they move in to attack on anyone inside the barracks. Keeping your door closed on round 1 is the most assured way to keep your figures safe, although that will most likely mean giving up the valuable barracks to your opponent. Players seeking to use the green lane as a staging area against the barracks should hug the walls and keep 1 space between their figure and the side entrance, so as not to give figures deep inside the barracks easy attacks against them. Moving into the barracks to get an attack against an opponent on the other side usually involves having to move up against the blocking terrain in the middle, because the impassable terrain on each side of the entrance makes it impossible to step to the side of that wall for an attack. However, mobile figures have the advantage of ignoring this restriction and therefore have the option of attacking past the blocking terrain wall with 1 fewer movement spent, although this also carries the risk of being exposed to attacks from the green lane. Because the abundance of skinny red and black terrain lines on the map, this map can be a nightmare for Han players and a dream come true for Greedo players. If you are a Han player and want to position him in such a way that he cannot be attacked from spaces he can't attack back from, and has the most options for an end of round attack, these 2 spaces are going to be your best bet, although they are also significantly exposed, so should not be lingered in for long. Once he makes his end of round attack, you'll want to move him back into one of these spaces, preferably next to C-3PO, where again it becomes very difficult to attack him without enabling his return fire. If you're playing against Greedo, you're probably just going to have to accept that he's going to be able to shoot at your figures without giving you any slow on the draw triggers, and just kill Greedo as soon as possible. Your main strategical decisions on this map will consist of if and when to open the door closest to your deployment zone, and which combat lanes you will commit your figures to. The most assertive opening is going to involve opening your door on round 1 and then immediately moving a hard-hitting ranged figure up to the blocking terrain wall to take a shot into the opponent's deployment zone as soon as they open their door. I think it will be especially important for the red player to do this, as they have a harder time accessing the red lane and do not have any blocking terrain between their deployment zone and the barracks to hide behind. If your opponent is making a strong push into the barracks with some powerful haymaker figures on round 1, consider leaving your door closed to deny them the ability to exert pressure on your deployment zone. This is an especially valid tactic for the blue player since they have easier access to the red lane to send in a flanker, and can make use of the protective blocking terrain to hide their troops in before opening the door in round 2. Even on Claim the Ruins, which carries a harsh punishment for not controlling the barracks at the end of each round, a player who is utilizing a pincer maneuver to attack a player in the barracks from the red and green lanes can at least soften the 6 VP blow by controlling the shield generator near the green lane and or using an end of round activation to place a figure on a barrack square to deny the opponent the 6 VPs for controlling it. Overall, I have to say that Endor Defense Station feels like a very balanced map, especially compared to other skirmish maps we've had in the past. Its symmetrical nature and multiple combat lanes make it feel reminiscent to the Mos Eisley Back Alleys map from several rotations ago, but distinguishes itself with a greater focus on hold and control style gameplay rather than a focus on run and gun and sniping down the middle line that was a hallmark of the Mos Eisley map. The games that I have played on this map have been fun and exciting, with ample opportunities for both melee and ranged figures to utilize the map's layout and terrain to gain an advantage. While controlling the center barracks is heavily incentivized, the map is large enough with enough rewards outside of the barracks that there are plenty of opportunities for players to use alternate strategies to win the game. Thank you for watching. I hope you can take a moment to hit that like and subscribe button if you enjoyed this content, and head over to our Patreon page at patreon.com/iacommand, where I'm giving away a ton of awesome alt arts to anybody who takes the time to sign up and donate. Every dollar you donate not only helps to support the channel, it lets me know that there are people out there that really value the hard work I put into this small community and motivates me to keep making the content for all of you. See you next time.